You are here because the outside world rejects you. This is your family.
The Last Ronin, one of the most epic Ninja Turtles tales in many years, and now it looks like we're going to be getting a new Last Ronin spin-off book that was recently announced called The Last Ronin, The Lost Years, and that got me thinking, what would be an interesting Ronin video to do? Well, recently, you may have noticed the series here on the channel called The Dark Moments in Ninja Turtles History. It's pretty self-explanatory, but we jump into different versions of the TMNT and discuss some of these brutal, tragic, and sad moments that the Turtles have gone through. So, when thinking of The Last Ronin, it only made sense that we go ahead and do another video in this series, but this time a Last Ronin edition, since it's full of so many dark moments. So that's what we're going to do today, so get ready, because in this video we're going to take a look at 10 of the darkest moments in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles The Last Ronin. Oh, and spoiler warning, we're going to dive full into spoilers. If you haven't read The Last Ronin and don't want to be spoiled, then go ahead and click away now. But for everyone else, let's go ahead and dive right in. I mean, let's just start off with the big ones. It's probably why most of you guys are here. The death of the Turtles. Each one is tragic in its own way. First up, for number one, we have Raphael. In the flashbacks of the book, we see that Raphael goes into an absolute rage when he, the Turtles, and Splinter are ambushed by the Foot Clan and Splinter almost dies. This moment is super dark, with Splinter bleeding on a table, Michelangelo crying by his side, and this causes Raphael to go off on his own to seek vengeance, which ultimately results in a bloody battle with a large group of foot soldiers. Here we see Raphael hit with a barrage of arrows, stabbed with weapons, but Raphael wasn't down yet. It's not until he faces off with Karl that he meets his end. The two battle it out and then end up falling into the river. In the water, their fight continues, but Karl pulls out a small knife and stabs Raphael under the chin and through his head. Raphael, now lifeless, can then be seen falling into the dark depths of the river, never to be seen again. Our next turtle death came at a point in the story, sometime after Raphael's death. In these flashbacks, we see Donatello and Splinter ended up going off to Japan to try to seek peace with the Foot Clan. Since Raphael died and Karl is now in a coma, Splinter feels both sides have lost too much and that it's time for peace talks. Leonardo stays back with Casey Jones, April, the Fugitoid, and Michelangelo. But with Donatello and Splinter gone, the group is not as strong, and so this is when Leonardo and the group get ambushed by Baxter Stockman, who is in cahoots with the Foot Clan and their new leader, Oroku Hiroto, or Shredder's grandson. Leonardo and the rest of the group put up a valiant effort in this ambush. We see Leonardo slicing up foot soldiers, which is pretty awesome. But when Baxter Stockman is faced with an ultimatum involving the Fugitoid, he says if he can't have the Fugitoid, then no one will. And so Baxter proceeds to detonate all of his machines that had swarmed the building, causing the building to explode. Leonardo is killed in the blast. So the previous explosion we just spoke about also causes other tragic events in this story. You see, in this story, April and Casey got married, and in the explosion, Casey Jones died alongside Leonardo. The blast also blew off some of April's limbs. She is missing part of her arm and leg when we see her in the present time. Now, when she went to the hospital because of this explosion, she found out that she was pregnant. So it's pretty sad that Casey never got to meet his daughter. April alone, down in the Turtles' old home in the sewers, would have to raise this girl, who we get to meet later. Her name is Casey Marie Jones, and she ends up becoming a student of Michelangelo. Our next dark moment takes us over to Donatello and Splinter as they arrive in Japan. First, they meet up with some allies who welcome them, and that end up going with them to meet up with the Foot Clan for the peace talks. Although the peace talks take place in a graveyard. Right off the bat, you can tell that something is not right. It's not too long after the conversation gets started that we see that Splinter and Donatello are being set up and that this is an ambush. A massive fight breaks out with Splinter and Donatello taking on the Foot Clan. We see Splinter decapitating foot soldiers, Donatello stabbing one in the face with his bow staff, but we also see Donatello getting stabbed as well. It's a bloody battle. But when Oroku Hiroto, Shredder's grandson, shows up with archers, they all fire upon Don and Splinter. Arrows rain down upon them as Donatello says, "Father, get behind me." Splinter yells out, "My son," but there's nothing they can do. Once the battle is over, we see that the Turtles' allies that welcomed them there end up finding Splinter and Donatello's bodies covered in arrows. Now, the flashback of the turtle deaths are all dark moments in this story, but they're not the only ones. In issue 1, we get a pretty dark moment in the present as our last Ronin, Michelangelo, tries a direct attack on Iroko Hiroto's facility. He's not quiet about it either. He gets noticed right away, and we see him cutting through all the synth ninjas and even finding out that some of them still have human parts inside of them, which is kind of creepy. Now, he gets pretty close to Hiroto, but is ultimately knocked out of a high-rise by one of Baxter Stockman's giant robots. Michelangelo falls from very high up and slams into the ground below. He can then be seen coughing up blood, and you can tell that he is severely injured. He makes his way down into the sewers with blood dripping everywhere. One of the saddest parts about this is when he starts talking about his brothers and his father, saying that they were always so different, but also so much alike, and how much he misses them, and that all that he wanted more than anything was to make his father proud. And this is when he goes to stab himself and put an end to it all. Luckily, he passes out before he's able to do so. But yeah, a pretty dark moment in this last Ronin story. Shredder's grandson, Oroku Hiroto, is a dark character in himself. One moment that I found particularly dark, though, in the story is when he asks one of his captains for an update on the Ronin situation. When he finds out that not much progress has been made, he tells his captain to launch a full-scale crackdown on the city until someone gives up the location of the Ronin. He also tells him one more thing before he goes, that the price for failing him would be the same as the previous captain that failed him. And this is when we see a couple of crows picking at the skull of Oroku Hiroto's last captain. Super dark. Now, jumping back to the flashbacks, Michelangelo eventually flew to Japan and found out about his family's death. After this, he aimlessly walked through the mountains, and at one point it got so cold that he almost died, but that for some reason, when he laid down and was ready to give up, his body would not die. Now, eventually it got warmer and he settled in where he was at and just started living up there, until one day a group of humans found him and thought he was a monster. At first, when they attacked him, he said he wanted to let them kill him, but then he saw them laughing and making jokes as they beat him. This is when something happened to Michelangelo. This is when his transformation into the last Ronin began. You don't see exactly what happened, but it's presumed that Mikey snapped and killed them all. This started him on a journey abroad that is actually gonna be that new Last Ronin comic spin-off that I was talking about at the beginning of the video, called The Last Ronin: The Lost Years. Anyways, truly another dark moment from this story. Towards the end of the Last Ronin comic, when Michelangelo starts his final attack on Oroku Hiroto's facility, he finds out that the human foot soldiers have gotten weak over the years without the turtles around. This new Foot Clan seems to rely too much on Baxter Stockman's technology, and at the end, when the power is cut off to that tech once Baxter Stockman is killed, Michelangelo slices through the Foot Clan with ease, leaving a trail of bodies everywhere he goes. And it's all topped off with Michelangelo fighting a giant guard, which he ends up stabbing in the neck with Leonardo's broken katana. It's pretty brutal. Now, right before the last battle in The Last Ronin, Michelangelo and Oroku Hiroto have a heated exchange, and it's during this heated exchange that we got a very unpredictable and dark moment. The two begin to have a conversation about family and how Hiroto killed Mikey's. Michelangelo then says, "Now your family will die," insinuating that he will kill Karai in her comatose tank that Hiroto keeps her in. Now, this is when Hiroto says, "In truth, I always hated her," and then he proceeds to break her glass tank, stabbing and killing her. I remember when this came out, it was definitely a big WTF moment that I did not see coming. The final battle with Michelangelo and Oroku Hiroto is an all-out, no-holds-barred affair. The bloody battle starts off in Hiroto's building, which they end up falling off of and land on some rooftops nearby. Now, it's hard to damage Hiroto, as his suit uses some type of technology that repairs itself. Eventually, Mikey realizes that if you hit the suit hard enough, it creates an opening that lasts a little longer before it heals. Knowing this, Mikey starts creating big hits like this on Hiroto, and every time that he does, does, he uses one of his brother's 3 broken weapons that they left behind after they died, injuring Hiroto little by little. Eventually, the fight ends up in the streets and then down into the sewers, where the two are swept away by a rush of water. The two end up in a dirty, muddy river and continue to slug it out. In a desperate move, Hiroto does some type of electric self-destruction attack, which I believe he didn't think would affect him. He was wrong. This leaves him dead, face down in the river. And so this whole ordeal was finally over. Now, after all the injuries in his battle, Michelangelo also dies here in the mud, saying his last words to Casey Marie Jones and giving her Splinter's journal with all his teachings in it. All the while, April's looking on as she also says goodbye to her friend, Michelangelo. A super sad end to the Ronin story, but definitely a classic that no one will ever forget. Alright everyone, those are some of the darkest moments in Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin. Let me know down below in the comments if there's any I missed that you think should have made it onto the list. Maybe some that impacted you the most. Love to see what you all have to say. Thanks everyone for watching. Follow on all the social medias. Links are down below in the description. Also, don't forget to mark your calendars for The Last Ronin, The Lost Years, which, as I mentioned, will explore Michelangelo's journey back when he found out about his family's death in Japan. We've also heard that in the present timeline, Casey Marie Jones, along with Splinter's book that she inherited, will be training 4 new Ninja Turtles, the baby turtles that we saw teased at the end of The Last Ronin. So you're not going to want to miss any of that. I'm definitely going to cover it all here. So if you're new, hit subscribe. That's all we talk about on here is new, old, and upcoming turtle stuff. But yeah, that's it for this one. I will see you guys in a little bit with another video. Take care.